When Red Bull opened Verstappen's telemetry data after the Brazilian Grand Prix, the entire room went silent. What they found inside those numbers didn't make sense, not even to the engineers who built the car. It wasn't just fast. It was superhuman. Verstappen's data showed inputs so precise, so consistent, that even Red Bull's simulation team couldn't replicate them. They called it a performance from another planet. What could possibly make the world's best Formula One team speechless? What did Verstappen do in that cockpit, starting from the pit lane, facing chaos, a puncture, and still finishing second that defied everything the data predicted? Stay right here, because we're about to break down the telemetry behind Max Verstappen's impossible Brazilian comeback, the laps that Red Bull's engineers still can't explain. Interlagos, the track that reveals truth. Its bumps, its rhythm, its chaos. In Brazil 2025, Max Verstappen faced his hardest test yet. A car rebuilt overnight. A pit lane start. A 20-second gap to the field before the lights even went out. On paper, there was no chance. And yet, by the time he crossed the line, the data that Red Bull downloaded from his RB21 left even the most experienced engineers stunned. The story began in failure. Saturday qualifying was a disaster. Verstappen's car felt wrong from the first lap, nervous, unpredictable, and impossible to trust. "It's dancing everywhere, mate." "No grip," he said on the radio. It wasn't frustration, it was analysis. He knew exactly what was broken. So Red Bull did the unthinkable. They broke park firm, stripped the car overnight, fitted a brand new Honda power unit, recalibrated suspension geometry, and completely reset the setup. The penalty? Starting from the pit lane. But Verstappen didn't see punishment, he saw opportunity. When the race began, chaos exploded at the front. Norris and Piastri battled hard into turn 1. Debris scattered, and Verstappen waited. Then came the green light at the end of the pit lane. The RB21 launched like a bullet. The telemetry later showed something extraordinary: perfect throttle modulation from 0 to full power in under 2 seconds, no traction loss, no wheel spin. That level of control simply shouldn't be possible on cold tires. Within 5 laps, he was already overtaking cars with surgical precision. Every movement, every brake trace, every steering input was clean, sharp, repeatable. And then, lap 13. A puncture. Most drivers would have panicked, but Verstappen's data showed no erratic spikes in steering or braking, just calm corrections, controlled inputs, and a direct radio message: front right gone. Boxing now. He rejoined last. And that's when the impossible began. The telemetry that followed looked almost unreal. Each lap, Verstappen's cornering speeds increased. His throttle traces became smoother. The car's energy recovery system synced perfectly with his driving rhythm. He wasn't just fast, he was improving, every lap, by measurable percentages. By the halfway point, his data looked more like qualifying laps than race pace. And it stayed that way, consistent, flawless, unrelenting. When he crossed the line in second, Red Bull's engineers pulled the data. And what they found changed everything they thought they knew about Verstappen. From the very first lap of practice, Verstappen knew something was fundamentally wrong. The RB21 wasn't behaving like a Red Bull. The rear end snapped unpredictably, the front washed wide through fast corners, and every braking zone felt like walking on ice. His radio messages came in early, direct, and detailed. The balance is all over the place. I turn in, it slides. Mid-corner grip is gone. These weren't complaints, they were data points from a driver who understands the car better than anyone. But by the end of FP2, the telemetry confirmed what he felt: instability everywhere. The car's aero platform was oscillating, the floor was stalling, and the ride height was wrong. Saturday only made things worse. Red Bull's engineers tried to chase stability by adjusting the suspension stiffness and rear wing load, but it only exaggerated the issue. During qualifying, Verstappen's steering trace looked like chaos: rapid corrections, inconsistent throttle modulation, a car refusing to stay planted. The data told the story clearly: the RB21 was losing downforce mid-corner, costing him almost half a second per lap. And so, for the first time in years, Max Verstappen was eliminated in Q1 on pure pace. No rain, no mistakes, just physics working against him. Inside the Red Bull garage, the silence was heavy. Engineers stared at graphs that didn't make sense. The RB21's dynamic pressure ratios were fluctuating outside expected ranges. The telemetry looked like two different cars stitched together, unstable in low speed, unpredictable in high. Adrian Newey himself reviewed the traces and shook his head. They had missed something fundamental. That night, a meeting was called between the engineering team, Lambiase, and Verstappen. The conclusion was brutal but honest. The car was beyond rescue in park-firm condition. And then came the decision of full rebuild. Red Bull would break park firm, strip the RB21 to its core, fit a new Honda power unit, change suspension geometry, and revert to an older but more balanced floor design. They knew what it would cost starting from the pit lane. But Verstappen didn't hesitate. He looked at his race engineer and said quietly, "If we do this, I'll bring it back." By midnight, the garage was a blur of movement. Mechanics replaced sensors, rewired the MGUK systems, and recalibrated brake bias manually. They were chasing precision, not luck. It was a reset not just for the car, but for the team's belief in their driver. And when the telemetry finally stabilized, the numbers started to make sense again. When the sun rose over Interlagos, the Red Bull garage looked more like a laboratory than a pit. The RB21 sat stripped and silent, cables and laptops surrounding it like a patient under observation. The rebuild had been total. Overnight, the engineers had redefined every measurable variable: suspension geometry, aero load, torque mapping, even brake migration ratios. Nothing remained from the failed qualifying setup. It was a gamble that only a team with Red Bull's engineering nerve could attempt, and only a driver like Max Verstappen could justify. The biggest change was hidden beneath the skin. The old power unit was gone, replaced by a brand new Honda engine, untouched, untested, and absolutely raw. Its telemetry profile was clean, zero degradation, perfect pressure stability, full electrical recovery potential. Combined with a rebalanced floor and a revised rear suspension linkage, the RB21's predicted behavior shifted from unstable to surgically precise. The simulation showed what Verstappen needed to see: control under braking, traction on demand, and enough downforce to attack. Red Bull had built him a car to fight, not to survive. When Verstappen climbed into the cockpit on Sunday morning, there was no speech, no tension. He knew what they'd done for him. The engine fired with a deeper growl than before, a clean, brutal note that echoed through the garage. The first installation laps were all the confirmation Red Bull needed. The live telemetry showed it immediately: throttle modulation smoother, brake pressure linear, steering input clean. The old car had been unstable through turns 6 and 7, losing 0.4 seconds in oscillation. Now, the RB21 flowed like it was on rails. Even Lambiase, who never uses superlatives, said quietly over the radio, "Car looks good, mate." Then came the start. As the grid thundered toward turn 1, Verstappen waited in the pit lane, calm, visor down, hand on the clutch. When the green light released him, the RB21 launched cleanly, no spin, no waste. The telemetry told a story that would later astonish Red Bull's analysts. His throttle trace through the Senna S was near perfect, 98% application with zero traction loss, an almost impossible feat on cold tires. In other words, Verstappen had managed to generate grip where physics said there shouldn't be any. Within 10 laps, the data coming back to the pit wall was extraordinary. Corner entry speeds were 5 km/h faster than predicted. Brake pressure variation? Less than 1% absolute consistency. Steering inputs through the fast middle sector were almost identical lap after lap. Red Bull's chief data engineer turned to Lambiase and said, "He's driving it like qualifying every lap." They had given him a car capable of redemption, and he was using it with the precision of a machine. And then, lap 13, the puncture. A sharp drop in tire pressure triggered the alarm on Red Bull's dashboard. Most drivers would have panicked, but Verstappen's data didn't even blink. No spike in brake temperature, no erratic steering. Just calm. Controlled deceleration, perfect pit entry, box, change, and back out. When he rejoined dead last, the telemetry traces looked exactly the same as before: steady, efficient, perfect. By lap 15, Red Bull's pit wall had seen enough. The telemetry wasn't just good, it was impossible. Verstappen's lap times were increasing with every run, but his tire wear readings were dropping. The graphs didn't make sense. His rear tire surface temperatures, which should have spiked under his relentless pace, were flatlining in the optimal window. The car wasn't degrading, it was stabilizing. For a Formula One engineer, that's like watching gravity switch off. That was when Gianpiero Lambiase made the call that changed the race. Max, we're going aggressive. Plan C confirmed. Push when I tell you. It was code for a three-stop strategy, an all-out assault that no one else dared attempt. The idea was simple: if Verstappen's driving was that efficient, they could afford to let him run flat out, pit more often, and still make up the time through pure pace. It was an audacious move, one that could only work with a driver whose consistency bordered on inhuman. From the first push lap, the telemetry lit up like a work of art. Corner entry speeds, up. Apex speed, up. Fuel flow rate, perfect. There wasn't a single wasted movement. He was braking later than anyone else, yet his brake temperatures stayed within range. His throttle modulation graph looked like a smooth waveform, no jagged edges, no corrections. Engineers back at Milton Keynes, watching the live feed, were sending messages like, "Is this even real?"